Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data and analytics.
Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson from Solutions Review, and welcome to Data Demo Day. Over the next 3 hours, you're going to see three very diverse data solutions. We have a recognized market leader, a newly launched hot data startup, and we'll close with a highly developed data and marketing platform. First, we're going to go to Utah and Domo. And if you don't know Domo, you should. They have over 1,800 customers worldwide, from large enterprises to SMBs. They're a recognized leader by pretty much everyone, Gartner, Forrester, G2 Crowd, Dresner. We certainly know Domo, and we think they're making a strong case for moving data and analytics to the cloud. They've developed a comprehensive platform that's intended to bring disparate data together, and lots of it, and the tools to let your people dig into that data and pull out all the diamonds of insights that exist. And we're joined today by Lisa Devashrayee-Oaks, Product Marketing Manager at Domo. Lisa, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you, Doug?
Very well, thanks. Rather than me getting in the way of a great demonstration, we're going to take a step back here in Boston, let you take the lead. If you can walk people through what you're going to present today and then get into the demo, we'll check back in about 30 minutes. We're going to be gathering up questions on our end, and we'll have a nice little QA session at the end, if that's all right with you.
That sounds great.
Tremendous. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. So yes, as Doug mentioned, we'll give you a little bit of an overview of how Domo can help your business, and we'll show you the product. So over the past few months, I think we all know that every business has really been put to the test of how we can learn and adapt to an environment that seems to be changing literally every day. And data and business intelligence is really core to how this gets done. So as a result, we're really seeing a huge shift in the role of how data and business intelligence can drive actual strategic initiatives at companies all over the world. And according to the research that we're seeing, there is explosive growth in self-service BI and cloud platform systems right now. So it does make perfect sense that in this time where, you know, we've got all this uncertainty, every decision that you make really counts, that improved access to some insights in your data would be a significant business advantage. And I guess the rub there, though, is choosing the right strategy. So, you know, you need to think about your current data strategy. You need to think about your current technology investments and infrastructure that you've set up. You need to think about your business processes and how they can change to support this new data strategy. And you need to think about how to get all the right information to your people and make sure that they can take action on the insights that they're finding. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how Domo can help you with those challenges. And we're going to talk about three key pillars of Domo. So one is data integration, one is data analysis, and then the other is intelligent apps. And these are really the three pillars that form Domo and can help you navigate these challenges that we're just talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I will show you Domo. We'll walk through it. All right. So what you're seeing here is a little bit of Domo under the hood. So the great thing about Domo's data integration solutions is that you can take data from any source, whether it's in a cloud system or whether it's in an on-premises system or a legacy system that you're tied to. And you can get it into Domo really seamlessly, and you don't have to build your own APIs from scratch. So here's just, again, a view of how data flows into Domo. You can see we've got several things going on here. Here's our Salesforce connection. So we've connected some Salesforce data, connected data from a whole bunch of other systems here. And we've even federated to a bunch of different data warehouses. So in this case, this is our BigQuery data warehouse that we've federated to. So another thing to note is that Domo can really help you see all of your data assets in one place. So you can see here all your data sets, and you can manage access to them all from here as well. So you can set up governance and security permissions all in one spot. So let's talk a little bit about ways that you can connect your data. So one way is through our cloud connectors that I mentioned. So we've got over 1,000 of these pre-built APIs, and you can really go through, search for the one that you want to find, the system that you're trying to work with, and then all you need to do is enter your account credentials, and you're on your way to getting your data into Domo. We also have a tool called Workbench that we use to bring on-premises data into Domo. So with that tool, you can securely upload your data to Domo, and you can leave it behind your firewall. You can also do something as simple as just upload a file. So you can see here, I could drag and drop a spreadsheet right in here to upload that data into Domo, or do something more sophisticated. As I mentioned before, with federated data, you could set up federation to different data warehouses that you may be using. So that's just a little bit about data integrating your data and connecting all your data. So I wanted to show you a little bit about, once your data is in, some of the tools that Domo has to help you combine and transform your data. So if we go right here, I can show you our Magic ETL tool. The beauty of Domo's ETL is that you don't have to be an expert to use it. So we have our Magic ETL tool that really is a drag and drop interface. It helps you just visualize your data flows. You can see we've even got a checklist here to help you understand what you need to do. And you can see here I've just set up a couple of input data sources, and I've configured those. And then down here, there's a number of things I can do with my data sets. I'm just going to show you how to do a quick join of the data. Simply just by dragging and dropping in with arrows, I can start getting on my way with that. So it's very simple to use. If you're more comfortable with you writing SQL transforms, you can certainly do that as well. So we have MySQL and Redshift here. So if you've got the expertise and you have a more complicated transform, you can go in here and create those as well. So that wraps up what I wanted to say about Domo's data integration capabilities. So the next piece of Domo that I want to show you is the data analysis. So the nice thing about data, and what's really unique about Domo, is that you can customize how you deliver data to your business. So you're looking right now at what we call a Domo story. So in addition to hundreds of chart types that you can use for your data, we've also got Domo stories. And Domo stories are just a more customized way to deliver a personalized experience to help guide people through the analysis of your data, and to really just tell a story with it. So you'll see this is an example of one of our stories. It looks complicated. It looks like it was complicated to create, but it really wasn't. It was really done with out-of-the-box Domo capabilities. So what you'll see here is we've put in our own image, our own background image. We've put in our logos, different fonts and colors. And each of these buttons here are actually links to another story. So we can look more at the supply chain story here. And what's nice here, I'll scroll through so you can see kind of what we've been able to put together. Really a custom look and feel. I can go ahead and I can filter this entire page. So all the charts that you see can be filtered. You'll see the values just changed there when I clicked on rotors. So that's a nice thing to be able to do. And this is really easy to edit. So if I go up here, I can simply edit this dashboard, and I go into edit mode. And now I've got a few different options. So I could change the background, for instance, of this chart very easily. There's also options over here where I could just drag and drop layout elements like charts and text and images right onto here to change this up. And the other thing that's nice is that once you create this, you don't have to create a separate mobile version. So you can see here, I can toggle between my desktop and my mobile view just to make sure that everything's looking the way I expect it to. So that's really nice as well. The last thing that I'll mention here is another key part of Domo for analysis, and that is setting up alerts. So we have this concept of managing by exception. So you can get alerted when there's some change in your data that requires your attention. And say, for instance, I wanted to understand if there's any changes in production, I want to get an alert about that. So that's just as simple as going here and saying alert me. And you can see here there are several alerts that other people have already set up. So for instance, this one is alert me when units produced this month are less than 20,000. So I could say, sure, I want to know when production goes below 20,000. Subscribe to that, and then I could get a text message. I could say, email me. I could even set up a phone call, so I could get an automated phone call when the data changes. So lots of flexibility there. I can also set up my own new alert. So that's really simple to do. So for instance, maybe I want to see one of these models. I want to know when production changes by 3%. So I can just simply go in and add that. I can change the text that comes up when I receive that alert on my phone or email or whichever method I chose. And I can even share this alert with other people and have other people subscribe to it right here. So really some powerful things you can do there to stay on top of your data and not have to be constantly checking. So those were the things I wanted to mention about Domo for analysis. The other thing that I would like to talk about is really exciting. It is our intelligent apps piece of the Domo platform. And this is really exciting because really the possibilities for building on Domo, on Domo's platform, are limited only to your imagination. So I want to show you Domo's App Store. So here's where you can go. We have a lot of apps out here. And I can just scroll through quickly and show you what we've got. We've got apps organized by categories, by capabilities. And Domo makes some apps and puts them out here. We also have partners and customers who create apps and have put them out here and made them available for purchase in our App Store. So a lot of Domo customers will go to this App Store and they'll find that someone has created an app that works for them, that solves the problem that they're looking at. Other customers will determine that there's a really unique business problem or issue or process that they need to solve for, and they need to build their own app. And they're finding that Domo is a really great way to build your own apps, low-code apps on the Domo platform. So the other cool thing to mention is, not only can you build these apps, but you can make them really interactive, and you can even set up automated actions so that your people can take immediate action on what they're seeing. They could send data back from Domo to a source system. They could even trigger an action from Domo in another system. So for instance, maybe inventory is low for a particular item. They could trigger a new order for that inventory in a different system. So really exciting things that can be done and that our customers are doing right now with apps. I'll show you just a couple of examples. So this is our retail store performance app. It just gives you a quick, this is for retail owners, of course, it just gives you a quick view of what's going on with your stores. And you can even look at past performance. You can get an overall status of how things are going. I can look at my sales versus goals and see how everyone is doing. Another example is our campaign scorecard app. So for marketing teams, they can get a quick view of what's going on with all their marketing campaigns, click-through rate, conversions. They can drill down by individual campaign and get some information on each one. And then I'll show you a little bit about how you go about building our apps in Domo. So here's a little bit of the tools that we provide to help you build apps. You can see here we've got several things here to get you started. And we also have a team of developers and consultants that are willing to work with you to help you build those apps, partner with you, and build those apps for you if needed. So that is our intelligent apps platform. Some really cool things that are going on with that. We're excited. And I think that wraps up what I wanted to share today. So we talked about how you can integrate data into Domo, really integrating data from anywhere, combining your data, joining it, cleaning it up, can all be done within Domo. Analyzing your data, and not just analyzing it with charts, but really some unique ways that you can provide a customized experience to people to experience your data and to understand it with Domo stories. And then alerts as well to help you keep on top of what's going on with your business and understand when data changes and when you need to take some action. And then, of course, we talked through intelligent apps. So again, really some great potential for building your own solutions on Domo's platform. And I should mention too, the great thing about building on Domo's platform is that you don't have to worry about hardware costs or storage costs. All the security and governance that is built into the Domo platform is already there, so you don't have to create those and manage those separately. So lots of things to think about there with those intelligent apps. So in closing, I just wanted to let you all know that we do have a free guided POC that we're offering. So if you'd like to give Domo a test drive with your own data and see how it works, you can head to our website, domo.com, and we can get you hooked up with that. So basically, we'll connect some of your data with our cloud connectors that we talked about. We'll get you started visualizing your data, and you can really just see how Domo works for yourself. So thank you again for joining us today, and that is, I'll throw it back to Doug, I guess.
Lisa, thanks very much for that demo. That was great. Before we let you run, I've got a few observations I'd like to make, and also we've got a few questions that we've received, and a couple of questions that we've developed over here at Solutions Review. What I wanted to talk a little bit about, at least after watching that, is how a new implementation kind of comes up. So I know you've got a whole lot of customers and you've done a whole lot of varying implementations. I'm curious, the way I saw that demo, there's tools right out of the box that you can use to get you started, and there are also tools like the app development that can really be quite powerful, but would require probably a little bit of time with the tool before you're kind of ready to build those apps. Is that how I'm seeing what you've presented?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of Domo is that there is a wide range. So if you're not really an expert in coding or data integration, for example, we've got solutions for you. But even for example, for our apps where you can build your own, it's really low code, it's simple app development, and we do have resources to help you should you need that.
And so, as you think about, Domo in 2020, and certainly it's a crazy time. Where are you seeing things progressing? I mean, have you seen an effect from the current situation on just the kind of customers that are coming to you, or the kinds of things that people are asking now that they may have to be more virtual?
Yeah, we are. We're seeing a lot of people, of course, who want to understand how their teams are working, and how are they communicating. So like, for instance, we just created the Zoom productivity tracker app. So you can see quickly how your teams are using Zoom and how much time they're spending in meetings, and, have conversations about, are those meetings productive? So there's definitely that element of virtual work. And I think there's also the element of just wanting to be able to make good decisions, really good data informed decisions at this time. And, we've got some data science offerings there that can help with that, with predictive analytics. We're just seeing more interest in really keeping on top of that data, and definitely making more data-driven decisions is just more important than ever.
I couldn't agree with you more. We have a couple of questions from our audience that I'm going to fire at you. One is from Kevin Smith. Can you talk about embedding options, iframes, APIs, etc.?
Yes, we do have an offering called Domo Everywhere. So we've got a few options, so you can definitely embed your Domo stories or pages into your own software, your own portal, and it doesn't require, again, a lot of coding. It's really simple with our embed functionality. We've also got Domo Publish, so you can publish your data across several Domo instances if you need to. But we do have some really strong offerings there, and definitely we're definitely seeing more demand for that type of thing as well.
Well, and a follow-on to that, is data required to be ingested, or can you operate on data in place? Is modeling required?
You can definitely operate. You don't have to move your data. So Domo's flexibility allows you to keep your data where it is. If you've already invested in your own data lakes or warehouses, you can keep your data there and federate to it. But if you want to bring your data into Domo, you can do that as well. So definitely some options.
I have a question with regard to the data science offerings. Can you talk a little bit more about those and what's included?
Yeah. So basically, our data science offering is our software. It's our data science suite, as well as our services. So what we provide is based on your specific use case for data science and your individual needs. We can give you a customized combination of those services and software, so you can basically understand what's causing business, what the impact is on business outputs, what are the inputs and outputs that are being affected, what are some causal relationships in your data, how can you automate some of your business processes. And we've got a team of data science PhDs that will work with you to help you uncover those use cases and then help you identify which pieces of the software will help you solve for your particular use case.
And so with regard to previous investments that folks have made. I know it's often a question as to whether or not, it'll work with this or that. Where do things stand in terms of if I've made an investment in a data warehouse? Is Domo still able to fit with that?
It absolutely is, yes. So Domo will plug and play with your existing solutions, and it's really designed to augment what you've already invested in. So if you've already got a data warehouse like Snowflake, for example, we can work with that. You don't have to move your data. If you have other tools that you're using for ETL, other things like that, we can definitely plug and play with those.
So we have a very specific question about integrations for an ERP, for Odoo ERP, but do you have a place where you have kind of your list of API connectors and the apps that you're currently integrated with?
Yeah, you can go to domo.com/app store, and you can search through all of our connectors that are available there.
And it's up to quite a few, I'm assuming.
Yes, over 1,000. Yeah.
Over 1,000. So we have another question from our attendees around platform update cycles. So how often is the platform updated? I know it's cloud-based. How is that pushed?
Yeah. So we do generally quarterly releases, and the nice thing about being a cloud platform is that you can just refresh your browser and get the changes. You don't have to update multiple environments or systems. It's really, really simple.
So I'm curious about the app building and the low code. I know this is something that at Solutions Review we are seeing a lot of, and it's really exciting in that you really are democratizing the ability for data analysts to do some really powerful things. Can you give some examples of some of the apps that are being built on the Domo platform?
Sure, yeah, and I can show you a couple of them. So this one, this is for IoT devices. So a lot of consumer devices have these IoT devices on them that are tracking usage of the product, any errors or problems with it. And so you can see, this is one we created. It's our fleet management app. So you can see where all of your devices are deployed, see if there's any that are in an error state, things like that. So that's one example. We also have a Domo Finance app. This basically is putting your P&L statement online, so you can go through and you can look at your data in different ways, different years, and so on. We've also helped a customer actually build an app to help their sales reps understand how their sales commissions are paid, because they have kind of a complicated commission structure. So we've helped them with that. Yes. And really, I mean, so many different use cases, and we've been able to go through and help people create apps that are just helping them run their business more smoothly.
No, it's great. We're getting a few more questions coming in. A question that certainly is an important one at any time, and that's, can you talk a little bit about the security and controlling access of the platform?
Yes, so we do have security built right in. We've got bring your own key encryption, we've got SSO integration, SOC 1, SOC 2 compliance. So we really try to check all the boxes with security. And then the nice thing about Domo too is you've got personalized data permissions that you can set up so that you can ensure that, while you want to democratize the data and make it available to everybody, you want to make sure that people see just the data that they're supposed to see. So Domo's built-in data permission structure really makes it simple to do that.
Well, and of course we're getting more questions, and obviously one of the questions would obviously pertain to pricing models, right? So when used in an OEM embedded manner, what is the pricing model? Is it by user seat, by project, by data? I think that's specific to the OEM use case.
Yeah. It's going to be dependent on your individual situation and some components that we need to work with you on. So I would say if you're interested in that, we can help you talk through the pricing a little bit more. I unfortunately don't have an out-of-the-box answer for you.
Yeah, no, and if you did, it would be online.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, obviously we're strong proponents of folks who are interested in learning more about the nitty-gritty of the Domo solution to reach out and contact the sales department at Domo.
Yes, and you can look on domo.com. We do have a page for Domo Everywhere where you can get more information and get in contact with us.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I think well, wait a minute. Pardon me. They're still coming in. This is great. Just have to call them up. So with regard to while I'm doing that, I'm curious about, you have so many customers and they're so varied. Are you finding any particular industries that are moving at the moment more than others toward Domo?
We're really finding broad adoption across industries. It seems that, every marketing department, sales department, finance department, regardless of the industry, is finding a use for Domo. So that's really kind of the trend that we're seeing.
Well, with regard to another question, are all of your data centers in the U.S.?
No, we have some global as well. And again, we can get you more details on that if you're interested.
And does that have an impact in terms of implementations and so forth, and compliance and regulations with regard to some of these more global compliance issues?
Well, I can say we do have clients worldwide, so we're prepared and have worked with many of our clients to get all of that in place, and don't have any concerns about being able to meet those compliance needs.
So we have a question about dynamic dashboards, and interesting enough, do you have an alternate method like PDF reports or .pptx formats?
We do. You can definitely export any of those visualizations that I was showing you to a PowerPoint. You can have them be scheduled reports that get sent to people on whatever interval you want. You can share them within the Domo platform. Lots of flexibility for how you can share those.
Well, tremendous. Well, Lisa, this was great. Thanks for leading off. This is our first demo day, and we're really excited that you were a part of it. We've been tracking Domo for as long as we've been around, and we've been around for 8 years here at Solutions Review, and it's been fascinating to watch the space grow, the solutions get more advanced, and the cloud to be even more powerful now than 8 years ago, and that was really helpful for us, and I think it was helpful for our audience. So thanks very much for being a part of it.
Thanks for having us.
You bet.
Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data and analytics.
Hi, I'm Doug Atkinson, back here at Data Demo Day in Boston, and we're going to be going to San Francisco for our second demo of the day. And one of the cool things about being at Solutions Review is just when you think you've seen all the technologies that are going to exist, more come out, more categories, more solutions, and what you're going to see in the next hour is one of the newer, hotter data startups. In San Francisco, we're going to go to Sisu Data. And one of the great things is that Sisu Data is a new innovative startup, launched out of stealth mode last October, great buzz, $52 million in top tier venture funds. A couple of initial takes about Sisu Data from us. They've really focused on the whys of your data and not just the whats. And I think you'll see that when they get into their demo. It's an interesting perspective. And second, they're really taking the power of AI and machine learning in a meaningful way to the data and analytics game, and I think you'll see that as well. In San Francisco, we're joined by Grant Shirk, who's the Vice President of Marketing at Sisu Data. Grant, thanks for being with us.
I'm glad to be here, Doug. How are you doing this morning?
Things are going great. We've had a great first hour. We're looking forward to the Sisu Data demo. Rather than, again, me being in the way of this, we're going to come back and have a nice QA session at the end. But really, I'm going to step out now for the next 30 minutes or so and let you have at it and let you show all the interesting things that you're doing over there.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it. Looks like we've got a really good audience here today. So please get the questions in. I would love to adjust and adapt the demo based on your interests. It's always hard to prepare. But before we head into that, so we know what we're going to look at, I'd love to spend a couple of minutes setting some context about what it is we are building at Sisu and exactly why we think it's an exciting opportunity for both individual analysts and analytics teams. So we'll spend a couple of minutes here and then jump straight into the product, at which point we get to do the fun part of trying to play stump the demo guy, which should be fun. So jumping into this, the problem that we are trying to solve, and actually all of us are trying to solve, I think was encapsulated really well just a couple days ago by a customer we were talking to as we were walking through some of their challenges dealing with this issue around diagnostic analytics. She said to us, there's just so much data and so many metrics that are coming into our warehouse and from the business, we can't possibly monitor them all. With all of the dashboards and all of the reports that we've built, it would take us days to go through each and every one of our tools and these visualizations and proactively ask that question of, is there something interesting here? How do we tease out what matters? And ultimately, how do we get to the point of explaining why we're seeing the shifts that we are in our data? And that's exactly what we are helping our customers with. And I think the reason this is so acute right now is that the metrics that we track change far faster than we're actually able to explain why they're changing. And the reason for that is the complexity and the depth of the data that we're able to capture. For me, the metaphor that I use here is that we've built on top of Snowflake and Redshift and Google BigQuery and Azure Synapse an infinitely scalable and infinitely efficient container ship. We can stack as much data and as many calculations into that as possible. The challenge is the tools that we're left with to try to get that source of truth out into the ocean is kind of like a sailboat. And our ability to keep up with rapidly changing customer behavior, application dynamics, and other operational processes is just almost impossible when I'm doing manual exploration and analysis. And the reason for that is the width and the complexity of the data that we're capturing. I mean, if you just look across the different industries, and these are some very basic things. If you're looking at customer acquisition metrics, most companies have at least a couple of dozen variables that they track when they look at how are customers coming to my platform. We see that scaling out into tens of millions of possible explanations or variables. You can never check all of those. Scale that up, looking at things like revenue retention, when I'm looking at customer engagement over time, that easily gets to the point of having hundreds of millions of possible hypotheses I can look at. And when you're really looking at complex metrics, we have customers who are looking at hundreds and hundreds of variables for every customer, for every interaction. That generates tens of billions of possible combinations. And it's that level of complexity that makes it really, really hard to get ahead of the metrics that we're tracking. And this is at the core of what we see as the analyst dilemma. We have too much data and not enough time. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. And that's causing a ton of problems. Certainly talking about speed, we don't get answers fast enough to help inform better decisions across the organization. It means we have all of this data and we're still making gut feel calls because we can't get answers back fast enough. And that falls on us because we feel like, how could I go faster? How can I answer more of these ad hoc and ongoing questions? At the same time, because the search space is so wide, it's hard to know, did we get the right answer? Did we find the first answer? And how does that compare to other possible hypotheses? Checking that space it's like trying to find useful information on the internet by browsing one page at a time. We just don't do that anymore. We have Google to do that for us. And ultimately, as a result of these two things, the usefulness of the answers that we do find, we're not always confident as analysts that are these clear enough to drive good action? And that's exactly what we're stepping into at Sisu. And so the challenge is at best, it feels like we're squinting at the data that we have. We have these great dashboards. They can show us the cohorts and the trends over time. But ultimately, as soon as you show someone a new report, they're going to come back with more questions. Well, why are our session durations declining on our website and our applications? What's driving this spike in mobile signups that I'm seeing in the Twin Cities? What's happening there? And even more importantly, business metrics. Our free trial conversions are falling lower in Boston. What's contributing to that? What factors are there? I have 40 or 50 different individual variables I can look at. Which one matters? And that's exactly what we're trying to build. We are building here at what Sisu is, and we'll show you this here in a minute, is the fastest and most comprehensive diagnostic platform for enterprise data. What that means is we answer one question for our customers over and over again faster than they ever could before, which is, why are my key metrics changing? What are the populations and groups that are actually driving that change? And doing that 10 and sometimes 100 times faster than conventional analytics tools. The other advantage here is with Sisu, you can use those beautiful wide flat tables that you're putting in Snowflake and Redshift and consider every single factor and every single combination of those factors in a matter of seconds. And then as more transactions arrive, as more users come to the platform, we can continuously evaluate that information as data changes. Doug, as you mentioned, we've been building this platform for the past couple of years, and we're really working tightly with our partners at NEA and Andreessen Horowitz and Green Bay Ventures to do this. And the research that sits behind Sisu comes from our founder and CEO's lab at Stanford. Peter Bayless is an expert in large-scale data exploration and transaction processing, and he's brought that knowledge to a more practical problem here at Sisu. And ultimately, that's what we are going to talk about today, is how we help companies understand these metrics from cost per installation, conversion rates, customer lifetime value are actually changing across the organization. We're doing this for companies like across industries, everyone from Majuri in the retail and digitally native brand industries, all the way up to giants like Samsung, where we've been helping them understand why things like their Galaxy and Galaxy Note upgrades were slowing after their launch period. And the quote that we received back from their head of analytics was, with Sisu, we're able to answer 10 times more questions than we ever could before without ever having to add another analyst. By their calculations, we were able to save them in the first couple of months of working with us over 900 hours of analyst time, meaning that they're spending a lot less time in the rote work of slicing and dicing and a lot more time in that creative rogue thinking and analysis around, what does this mean for the business? It's all about making analysts far more proactive in their approach. All right, so let's look at this in practice. What I'm going to do for our demo is pick one of these KPIs that we've been talking about. And I want to look at something that's pretty common across industries, a free trial conversion rate. So imagine anyone from a Disney Plus or an HBO Max down to perhaps a subscription retail service like a Stitch Fix. Thinking about, how do I get customers from a limited or a free trial of my product up into a deeper, more valuable interaction. And this is a pretty complex problem. To demonstrate this, I'm actually going to start in a tool that probably all of you are quite familiar with. Here what we have is Tableau. This is our second favorite Stanford startup, though I think $15 billion later, they're probably not much of a startup anymore. But the data, I want to start here so I can explain a little bit of the data set that we're working with and something that everyone is familiar with, but also this challenge and the pain around the manual diagnosis and slicing and dicing. What we are looking at here is a data set of essentially users, account level data that we are trying to understand what is happening in our activation rate. This is a critical metric. We're going to track this day over day, week over week, month over month. And the biggest question is, all right, if I kind of squint at this dashboard element of this report, I can see that over the past couple of months, something is happening with my activation rate. While there's a reasonably consistent number of people coming to the platform, I can tell that near the end, the gap between these two is starting to widen. And instantly, the first question that I'm going to get from my marketing team is, well, why are those activations rates falling off? And there's a number of ways I can look at this data. What I have available to me is a data source that has, I think there's 30 or 40 features in here, but it's very granular. It is at the account level. So we're kind of disaggregated and looking at this at the order of an account. We have the basic information that you'd expect, kind of the cohort, the registration date. I have my KPI that I care about. Did this person convert to paid? Yes or no? And on down the line, you can see what SKU they signed up with, what their subscription rate is, what do we know about their demographics, how many people are in the household, income, kind of marketing data, but also acquisition data. Where did they come from? Consumption data. What did they look at? What parts of my product did they consume in the first month, and on down the line? As you can imagine, there are far too many possibilities to check in this information. And so I'm left to either writing custom SQL, writing queries, or starting to explore through this. So if I want to look at what's happening with free trial activations, let's take a biased look at this and pick something. Like maybe there's something going on here with the product that people are picking up. It's like, well, okay, I'm starting to see there's some difference in the volume of SKUs. Clearly my family HD plan is more popular, but digging into and understanding, is this actually behaving different one over the other? Hard to say. Let's pull out the product SKU and let's say, what happens about people who are watching TV in the first month? Yes or no? Again, not there. What about people who watch TV in the first month on the different SKUs? Very, very quickly, this data starts to get pretty noisy. I'm looking for correlations here and there, but nothing is jumping out at me. And it's also really difficult to tell, is this significant? Are these changes impacting my overall metric or not? So you can imagine I could spend hours and many times days trying to tease this out, testing theories and hypotheses over time. The good news is now with Sisu, there's a better way to do this. So let me flip over quickly into the actual Sisu product and we can talk about how we approach this problem a little more programmatically. All right, so this is Sisu. Now, as a SaaS-based platform, what Sisu is going to allow us to do is automate and accelerate our ability to explore these really complex data sets. And in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to use the exact same information we were looking at in Tableau in all of its glory. But to orient us a little bit to us here, this is a project in Sisu. The main thing that I'm working with are these metrics. We would call them objectives, but whether I'm looking at overall performance metrics like my engagement score in my application, something maybe my data science team has put together, maybe something like householding. How many different products from my streaming service can I get attached to this account? And then potentially historical engagement as I'm looking to kind of build models for the future. But and we can also look at these things over time. As I mentioned, that continuous analysis component really comes through here, whether I'm looking at net promoter score over time, customer lifetime value on a rolling basis. All of these are possible, and we find customers really driving dozens, if not hundreds of different metrics and accelerating their ability to work through them on a daily and weekly basis. So to get started, Let's look at exactly what that could look like, doing that same analysis we were doing in Tableau in Sisu. To get started with Sisu, I'm going to point it at the exact same tables I'm using in Tableau. You can go directly from Tableau or Looker, your BI tool, into this, or you can start from scratch here. But with Sisu, instead of having to know every feature that's in my data, I need to know two things. I need to know where that data is, what's my table, and then I need to understand which of those columns defines my metric. Now we make it very easy to set these metrics up and share them across the organization, which also helps with the dissemination of this information. But the data that I'm working with today happens to live in Redshift. And this process is identical no matter what your data warehouse is, whether it's in the cloud and one of these more flexible tools, or if it's still on premises. In here, I may have lots of different tables, but I'm going to work with that exact same activations table that I was looking at. And here you can see, I'll show you a preview. Here are those account IDs with the weird B at the beginning of them. Registration, activation, all the way down into demographics and activity. The exact same information. And I believe there's 50 or 60,000 account records in this database. The second thing I need to tell Sisu is, what is my KPI? What's my metric? And here it is, that activated column that we were looking at. This is a category. You can also use it for continuous variables. And ultimately, one of the important signals that we give the tool is what's a positive signal in this metric. And because this is a generalized analytics tool, there's no custom model that sits behind this. We're relying on these weak signals to really accelerate this analysis. From there, Sisu is going to go and grab all of those other features and factors in the data and start doing the light feature engineering work to identify what's a category, what's continuous, where do I have unique variables, and maybe where can I build some statistically significant bins over time. I'm going to make this analysis even more complex and make sure we can look like to like and look at this by that cohort of registration that we were looking at in Tableau. From here, all I need to do is now ask Sisu to go and get the facts. And by clicking that button, what Sisu is going to do is automate and accelerate that trial and error hypothesis testing process that I was doing in Tableau earlier. It is literally saying, okay, Grant cares about the activation rate. What is the impact on the rate of true for households? What about households and income? What about household income and location? What about household income and SKU? Okay, what about customer age, promotion, and activity? And literally check every possible combination and permutation in the data. The great thing about this is it took me, 4 or 5 minutes to try 2 or 3 hypotheses in Tableau. In the 5 seconds that it took for Sisu to run through this, it looked at all 50,000 rows of data, every single feature in the table, and checked over almost 400,000 different combinations. As I mentioned, this is a smaller data set. I think our largest data set, the most complex one we've seen so far, had tens of millions of session level data rows in it, 900 features, and we processed through about 45 billion combinations in a matter of minutes. And that is the real power here, is that speed of testing, and then bringing back the results in a prioritized, ranked, and recommended way. Let's spend a couple minutes walking through. The results that Sisu have returned come into a couple categories. Certainly, we're going to get that overview of the metric that we would expect from an analytics tool. Show me what is month to month my performance change. And I'm getting a pretty good story here. I'm seeing my conversion rate actually increase 35% month over month. That's great. But what I really want to know is what's not working? What's starting to work less effectively, and potentially where are some really bright spots that I continue to mine and optimize in order to improve my business? Because not every month is going to be a good month. And of course, you're going to get that same dashboard level analysis that you would see in a BI tool. And this is going to match what you're seeing from your dashboard. This is a great way to connect that context for customers over time. But what we're really getting here in Sisu is this list of facts. And this is the true output of the tool. And what each one of these rows in the table is what we would call a fact. This is telling me specifically what are the populations in my data. So here, what are the account level characteristics that actually explain the shift in performance that I'm seeing from the previous period to the current? What explains the path that I took from a 15% conversion rate to a 21% conversion rate? And how do they work with each other? Think about this as another way to think about this is an incredibly fast, incredibly detailed waterfall chart. So, we had a fall off in our younger segment month over month. They actually had a negative impact on our conversion rate. And we had some bright spots with other age groups or other behavior segments. And that's what we're doing to drive this ranking. So for each one of these populations, you are getting the definition of the population. There's actually a really interesting one here I'll click into, which is define the group. So customer ages that we found between 18 and 25 who were acquired via the fall promo coupon, whatever this happens to be. But what was their behavior? Their behavior showed a very sharp decline. So this is someone who is behaving against the norm, almost a 30% decrease month over month. And they went from a population that was above average to significantly below. But what really matters is, does it matter to my metric? And this is this idea of impact in Sisu. And because this group exists in the data, it explains or has the impact of decreasing my objective by almost 4 percentage points. The other way to put this is that if these folks didn't exist in the data, my conversion rate could actually have been almost 25% over time. And it's this idea of impact that really makes this powerful because, as you know from your dashboards, whenever I show someone an insight or a fact, there's 10 more questions that they're going to ask about it. And being able to walk into that meeting prepared with the full depth and comprehensiveness of what you've checked is incredibly valuable. And having that in a matter of seconds means that we see people doing this live in meetings. Tapping into this, I can get a lot more detail about my population and how it compares to the rest. So certainly we have the same statistics blown out here that we saw in the summary list. Saying what was my overall change in rate for this group? How big is the population? Is this 2 people in Saskatchewan, or is this a sizable population? And how is that population changing? Because it could be that the impact that we see is explained by a population diminishing in size, increasing in size. Here we can see this is a core demographic that stayed consistent month over month. So I've got a good demographic and I've got a good promotion that people are picking up. The challenge is that there's this discontinuity in their behavior that we've found. And that explains the change. But then we also need to break that out. Is it just that younger users are not performing as well? It's like, well, as it turns out, they're actually kind of about the same. Maybe a little below average over time, but not too bad. Is it just this fall promo? It's like, no, overall, the fall promo is performing exactly the way it had month over month. So if I'm looking at a traditional dashboard, I am never going to see this intersection of population. And this is what Sisu is great at, is showing you those unbiased views of what's actually going on in your data. And then finally, we want to give you the ability to explore this further. Well, what about other populations? How is this promotion performing with older customers? How are younger customers interacting with other promotions? And because of the way Sisu works, we're automatically driving those comparisons for you. So you can really test the significance of this over time. We don't want to be a black box. We want to give you the data that allows you to tell the story and be that translator to the business. What I can see here is that overall, if I look across the other customer ages, there's actually a pretty significant uptake in these other groups. I can see here that my middle-aged users are really picking up this program. So I probably have a targeting or a messaging issue that my marketing team can interpret instantly. Similarly, if I want to look at how other promotions are performing with this age group, I have that information at my fingertips. What are the top performing promotion categories that I can probably double down on? I might be able to find, for example, this PCT 20 or probably 20% coupon is actually driving a pretty significant bump in conversion, but it's not getting the pickup that it should. So I can optimize my media mix and drive those decisions based on what I'm seeing here. So that's the analysis component of what we are doing. And as we move back over towards maybe bringing Doug back into this conversation, no data and no analysis really can stand alone. We need to bring other people into this conversation, and that's a core capability of Sisu as well. We want to allow you to tell these stories with the information. So as I'm finding the facts that are relevant to me, the first thing I'm going to want to do is probably flag the populations that are of interest. I can save this to what's called a fact board, save it for later, and potentially add some commentary or context around it. Additionally, I can provide my interpretation to what is happening with these facts. I'm going to point out here that fall 25 is really driving the wrong behavior. Let's dig in deeper to the coupons that are really working. And thank goodness for spell correct. All right. And now that context and that conversation is actually going to follow my analysis, whether I am working with it here in Sisu in a fact board, or potentially even sharing this out to the rest of the organization through a shared link, Slack, Messenger, Teams, you name it, or actually taking this directly into a pre-formatted PowerPoint presentation that I can rapidly share. This is all about getting to the point of making decisions faster and enabling you to use all of your data in real time in order to understand what is changing in your company. There are a number of different ways we can go from here, and some different capabilities I can show in terms of data management and other things, but I wanted to pause really quickly and take a look at the Q&A and probably the conversation to see if there are areas of this that we might want to dig into a little bit deeper. So I'm going to take a quick peek over there right now. Doug, are you seeing anything on your side?
We're monitoring it. Usually people have waited until the demonstration's done before we start to see the questions start to come in. But I have one to get the ball rolling.
Fantastic.
And honestly, what's most fascinating to me is when a company like Sisu emerges, and not to veer from the demonstration necessarily, but I think it's relevant. Where do you see you fitting with regard to existing implementations, existing, solution providers when you're talking to prospects?
That's a great question. So everyone that we work with has a pretty mature or maturing set of BI tools and diagnostics. They're looking at these critical KPIs on a daily basis and asking these questions. The power and where we see most of the teams benefiting, I have a couple stories here, is kind of supercharging their ability to get to that next level of diagnosis in the data. Being able to work from the same set of information, do that diagnostic task that today is primarily manual, and then surfacing those facts back up to the business, either back in that dashboard tool or through one of these other channels. Everyone has a regular cadence of kind of their weekly business review or their monthly data jam. I know we do that as an executive team at Sisu. We sit down once a month, we look at our OKRs and our key metrics and say, well, what's our level of confidence we're going to hit what we're going to hit? Where do we need to invest more resources in order to drive this? And whereas in past companies where I've done that, that's been a pretty laborious process. Today, you bring up Sisu, you ask a couple of these questions about your metrics, and you start seeing how those dynamics change. We actually did this the other day because somebody asked, well, we've sent, several thousand messages and emails through sales and marketing over the past couple months. What's working better? We use Sisu to dig in and look at some of these really deep factors in subject length. What's the length of the subject that matters? What about a reply versus a forward versus a regular message? What's driving open rates? What's driving engagement? What are the key terms in the first paragraph as we piece apart the textual data to see what really drives interest in what we're doing? And those are the kind of signals that tend to change quickly over time, particularly as the economy changes. But being able to get to it in half a second as opposed to half a day is really, really critical.
Well, and so that's one of the things that struck me about the demonstration is the horsepower that you're demonstrating, and it strikes me that that's really the opportunity for Sisu, is that idea of going to a completely new level of rapid analytics and modeling.
Yeah, I think that is where we are at today, is that our ability to collect this information has far outstripped our ability to work with it in a meaningful way. So we've built a beautiful source of truth in data, right? We've got pipelines and transformation tools and these incredibly flexible data warehouses that are bringing information in from dozens of sources. Our ability to actually use that has been hamstrung by the requirements of some of these older tools that are looking for narrower, more clean data. I mean, if you look at most organizations, 80% of an analyst's time is spent prepping data for analysis. It's about doing that manual feature engineering. It's about guessing, swagging as best as we can, what matters. I have 100 variables to choose from. I can deal with 12. Which ones do I pick? Sisu is going to accelerate that process and actually prioritize your attention to what matters now versus what matters the last time I looked at the data.
And so is that where you're finding traction at this point with customers that are gathering massive amounts of data? I mean, who are some of your early customers? I mean, you really have only been in the market for 8 months or so. I mean, where are you finding traction?
The traction is happening across a number of industries, but with I think the key characteristics is organizations that tend to capture not necessarily vast amounts of data, but highly granular information. So transactions, user sessions, interactions in an application, looking at engagement, things that are updating on a by the minute, by the hour, daily basis. And so that are things like, Samsung that we talked about, where they're looking at, for them, truly tens of millions of device owners. I think they have, they sell 80 million new devices every quarter, but they're also tracking hundreds of variables about not only your use of that device, but your interactions with their ecosystem of applications, and trying to understand how that matters and where to build next. We also work with a lot of smaller companies who are just starting to collect this data, but they have fewer resources on the analytics side to do that diagnosis. So I'm thinking about companies like Majuri in the online retail space, a digitally native vertical brand, or even House Call Pro in technology, who have very small analytics teams, but really, really rich data coming into their central warehouse. And, we heard from a couple of our customers, a theme is like, my chief operating officer, my head of consumer insights, has stopped asking me all of the questions that she has because she knows we don't have time to answer them all. And so, it's like, okay, so people are doing that triage in the back of their heads. Like, what's the most important question to answer now? As opposed to, I really want someone to come to me and prioritize where I should be spending my time, because I might be asking the wrong questions.
Right. So we do have a question coming in, and that is, does Sisu do outlier detection? So yes and no. I think that's a complex topic. Early on so the simple answer is yes. So as you look at even some of the examples we were looking at now, those facts that were coming up in the dashboard around specific populations that were outperforming or underperforming the current trend is absolutely an outlier detection situation. I would not put us in the category of doing application performance monitoring or risk monitoring, finding the truly extreme populations. But we also find that those are very isolated use cases. They're valuable, but it's a very specific thing. Ultimately, what matters most is really starting to go in and dissect, why is that population behaving differently? Is that a blip? Is that an extreme outlier? Or is that something that we can make a decision based off of, and providing that context? Another one, do you replace a BI tool like Tableau?
Absolutely not. So there is an immense amount of value that Tableau and Looker and these other BI tools bring to an organization, particularly giving that visibility and descriptive capability to the data. Right? They are the best in the business at describing what is happening, but getting into the how and the why, again, it is not what they were optimized for. And actually, Peter's lab is closely related to Pat's lab, Pat Hanrahan at Tableau. And so they're solving different sides of the same problem. And we believe that that diagnostic capability, particularly now when business markets, economies, society are changing so rapidly, that a lot of the predictive models that people are talking about are less relevant because the underlying data supporting them is no longer relevant. And doing that faster diagnosis will help us pick those back up over time and make sure we're moving in the right direction.
Another one.
Yes.
Can Sisu scale to include new data sources without performing a major overhaul of existing ETL processes?
Yeah, that's always the big challenge with our current environment is, somebody says, I've got a new variable. I've got a new data point. We just bought new system X and we want to incorporate that. The great thing about this is because we are not building a specialized model or a specialized analysis process for a given data set, we have customers who are adding columns day in and day out. And we just pick those up and incorporate them into that hypothesis testing and add them into the combination. So we've had companies who've started with, one of those 20 to 30 variable data sets and slowly over time expanded it to 100 without ever having to reset what they're doing in Sisu.
Well, I'm always curious about kind of the nuts and bolts of acquisition. And so how would a customer or somebody considering Sisu, how would they think about it in terms of an implementation? I mean, where do they need to be? What do they need to have? Is there a specific type of format of their data? What kinds of data? I mean, how does a customer kind of come to that stage where they're either ready for Sisu or kind of can engage?
Yeah, so if I may, I'll share my screen again quickly, I think, to demonstrate this. But like I said, if you're in that situation, you have a data warehouse, you have a BI tool, you already have the data that you need to get started with Sisu. And we really make that setup process incredibly straightforward and painless. In fact, most of our customers and even companies who are coming to us for a POC usually have their first analysis up and running in about 5 minutes. The way this works, we have a very robust data management capability in the tool. And again, whether you are connecting to a Redshift database, Snowflake, Vertica, you name it, my ability to quickly connect a new data source, view those tables, and even potentially bring some joins together is incredibly quick. I mean, looking at this, let's say I did want to go and add a new Snowflake data set. Essentially, I'm connecting to an existing user. By the time I've done that, Sisu is able to see the information and then immediately start going in and building some of the views of the data that we have in here. So I'm looking at customer churn. Here's the data, here's the table definition. Here's what I want to alias these for, so I can make this interpretable for the business. And then their next step is really doing that objective creation process that we started at the beginning. Tell me which of these columns I care about, which direction do I want it to go, and I'm off and running.
So I'm curious, one last question for me.
Yes.
What are you seeing with regard to the analyst role these days within organizations that you're working with or that you've worked with in the past? I mean, obviously the tools are becoming more powerful. Is that role beginning to change? Is that role becoming broader because of the tools available?
I would say that the direction that we're heading is actually more important. It's not necessarily broader. There's always going to be more data. There's always going to be more questions. But it's our ability to inform decisions that is so critical. Actually, I had this up. It looks like the share stopped. But you set this up beautifully. I think for analysts, like, the challenge that we see in the market today is there's a lot of conversation about these almost black box data tools. And they're coming at the problem of like, no, you don't need you don't need these citizen analysts. You can push this effort off to the head of marketing or the business. The problem is that, and again, I wish I'd said this. I didn't. We heard this from another customers that most data tools that we're seeing, they overestimate the abilities of these AI and ML models. We expect too much. We're kind of about to head into that trough of disillusionment that Gartner talks about around here. But the problem is people underestimate that importance of context. And that is where the analysts are most important. And that is where their scope can go. When I'm spending less time doing that data prep and slicing and dicing, I can actually provide that rich context, that translation to the business to actually help explain further what decisions we can make. And I actually see this as a huge opportunity and step forward for people who are in these roles today.
All right, we got a couple more questions that have come in.
Awesome.
So we're just going to keep going. Can Sisu scale to include new data sources? Oh no, we've already gotten that one.
Happy to talk about it again, but yeah, I think we got that.
Once deployed, am I going to increase my dependency on IT resources for maintenance and ad hoc reporting needs?
No, you are going to decrease your dependency. This is very tightly related to that last question. A lot of the time, we talk about going from a data warehouse to a data lake to a data mart and building these individualized views for people. That is an incredibly IT-centric problem, and I think is at the root of that. Do I need to go spend another $500,000 on ETL to get this done? I think this is not entirely Sisu, right? If you look broadly as we head to these more cloud-native data infrastructures, my ability to it doesn't cost me as much to just put everything into a wide flat table. And once I set up those simpler pipelines with things like Fivetran and Matillion and DBT, now it's really, really easy to just consume that data as it arrives. They actually handle a lot of the normalization and prep for you. And now you're actually just working with that source of truth that covers more ground.
And of course, a question that's just popped in, which is always a good question. Does Sisu have a free trial?
We do not have a free trial today. However, part of our process with customers is as we help you evaluate kind of essentially the shape of the data that you have in the warehouse, we will, first one's free. We absolutely will sit down with you, our solutions and our product solutions team, and identify a KPI or two that is particularly challenging to diagnose and get you up and running with that. So you can really prove to your organization whether or not you're going to get value from a tool like this.
Well, and ultimately, I mean, you want folks to be, fully engaged, and that's really a proof of concept, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. It's a very lightweight process. Like I said, if you can get started in 5 minutes, we find that most of these workshops will do in half a day or maybe a week if you want to get more people involved. But it's very straightforward. We're not talking about a 6-month implementation process here.
So to wrap things up, what's the best way for folks to engage with Sisu?
There's a number of ways to do it. You're absolutely welcome to contact me directly. I'm just grant@sisu.ai. But probably the best way to go is to find us online at sisu.ai. There's also a great conversation that tends to happen pretty regularly on Twitter at Sisu Data, where we're talking about both the research that we're working on in the area of data analytics and managing large data sets, but also just activities overall that are happening in the community. As a matter of fact, a quick plug for something that's happening next week. On June 11th, we are helping to host, along with Snowflake and Fivetran and Google Cloud Platform, the first ever, we think it's the first ever, Data Analyst Appreciation Day. So it's an opportunity to go recognize the people who have that true grit, resilience, and impact to the business that sometimes don't get noticed, and really celebrate a lot of the creative work and rogue thinking that happens in that group. We'd love to see any and all of you there as well.
Grant, this has been great. We were really excited to hear that Sisu was going to be a part of our data demo day. This was incredibly enlightening for me. I hope it was for all of our participants. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks everyone for the questions.
You bet.
Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston with presentations from prominent industry vendors, Solutions Review presents Data Demo Day, a virtual trade show for data and analytics.
Welcome back to Data Demo Day and hour 3 of our 3 solution provider demonstrations. Today we're going to, for the next hour, see TMMData, which is a solution that is been developed over the last 10 years, and I think you're really going to enjoy the demo, primarily because it's going to be done by Bob Selfridge, who's the CEO and founder, and also the Chief Technology Officer. The best part of having Solutions Review as a forum for this sort of thing is you get to present solutions like TMMData, who have been optimizing their platform for a decade. They're bringing everything to the table, full suite of tools, data integration, data prep, warehousing, visualization, data entry, data documentation, all in one platform. Bob has been driving the product strategy, design, and engineering of the TMMData solution for over a decade, and it's great to have him joining us from Pennsylvania. Bob, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on today, Doug. Thanks for allowing us this great opportunity to present to your viewers today.
You bet. Well, we've seen some really interesting technology, and as I've been saying, these are very complementary technologies, and I think what you're going to show us is something that really goes to a whole nother level in terms of its ability to incorporate not only disparate data and data sources, but all the other data functionality that organizations have to deal with. So I'm going to let you take it from here. We're going to check back in a half an hour or so. We're going to field some questions, have maybe a little 15-minute Q&A afterwards. But yeah, thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you in about 30 minutes.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, we pride ourselves on being more of a jack of all trades, or more of a Swiss Army knife versus a scalpel versus any kind of specialist. We do that on purpose. Our ultimate goal here as we walk through, I'm going to share a screen here. And ultimately what our goal is when we work through the process with data specialists, whether those specialists be, we like to say, anywhere from weak to geek. We want to be able to provide the needs and the platform capabilities for those users to be able to walk through their process, to get their data into one place, be able to work through those processes and out to whatever other systems they may need, but specifically be able to do it no matter where their skill sets are, but not limit their capabilities based upon the platform itself. So what I'd like to do here is just kind of walk through an overview of the way our perspective is on what we like to call the data supply chain is, very briefly, and then dive straight into a demonstration of the platform. It is demo day after all, so we want to kind of see the fun stuff that we can do. So as I noted before, we are a jack of all trades type agnostic platform. So the TMMData Foundation platform, ultimately our goal is to provide unified, and that's going to come up over and over again here today, ETL, which is extract, transform, load, but automation, integration, data processing services. So this is the pieces that's going to allow connectivity, all of our different, couple hundred connectors to connect to all these sources of data to both pull and push and automate that process. And again, that's the other word in regards to, yes, unify, but also automate. We're going to bang on that a lot today. Data warehousing, it's a place where a lot of large enterprise and small organizations get stuck a lot of times, is the fight over how do we get the data warehouse, who's going to manage the warehouse, where's it going to be, who's going to pay for it. We just provide that. It's just kind of built in, whether the organization chooses to use it at scale or whether they're using it just as a temporary storage spot, that's up to them. Data prep services, now that we are utilizing services, both the ETL and the data warehousing in one package that is there to work with itself, internally, doing things like data prep becomes much easier. So whether that be data cleanup or for aggregation or reporting services, now that we have all that data kind of flattened into one format, it's much easier to do. These three are kind of the core of what we're going to be focusing on today, and it's the heavy lifting pieces, right? This normally tends to be those long, 6-month, 18-month projects at enterprise organizations to select the ETL, select the warehouse, find your data prep tools and or BI tools, start trying to figure out how to make them all work. And our ultimate goal is to make those just kind of work together. Management services, being able to create a data catalog, be able to create some documentation around everything going on, and then allow collaboration around that. So instead of adding other sources of tools and other services to be able to do that, let's start adding that in, because we've got all this information that's just kind of there. Governance, data governance services. So, providing validation and auditing services. So if there are issues down the line, there's ways to be able to track that. Data lineage. If your ETL and your warehousing services are together, being able to find data lineage and who's touching it and where and when becomes much easier. Technology, that little tagline from analysts from Week to Geek. 85 to 90% of the time, a point and click type interface in any kind of platform really is what's needed to move data around from point A to point B and clean it up and work with it. Unfortunately, there's still that other 10 to 15% that is not easy. It's a complex beast that needs to be managed. So we do actually provide an underlying technology layer that allows customized like PHP, Python, Perl, our project, as well as underlying SQL code to be written at any step in any process. So it can just be inserted in there. And then anything that is user-facing, things like jQuery and HTML to be inserted as well. So we want to provide that flexibility for things like theming and those kind of things. And then I know everyone's shocked, but allowing things like theming and charting and dashboarding, it's kind of a mainstay in the industry. Every platform's got to have some sort of reporting mechanism and ways to display that. We provide that as well. And it's not that we are going to sit here and tell you that we are better at any one of these individual pieces. Where we believe we are going to provide that service better than a lot is in the fact that it's already built to work together natively within the platform. It's a data unification platform. So, to kind of look at this from what we like to call the data supply chain. Now, you're going to find all of our fun, we call them F-word, pieces of the platform. We're going to walk through this really quick, but what these are, these different form, file, fix, flow, flare, frame, these are the different tools within the platform. They're all just combined in the platform. We only sell one thing, it is the platform. But they're in there for a couple different reasons. One, it's much easier to explain what we do as we walk through this, but more importantly, the roles of the individuals who use the different portions, named portions of the tool, differentiate quite a bit based upon these tools. So, and it'll make a lot of sense here real quickly. So the flow tool is that ETL piece. That's the automation, integration, connector piece, right? That's the piece that connects to all of these services outside of the tool itself and the platform itself, and allows that flow of information. So it's the flows of data in and out of the platform. The file tool is the relational database. So it is a relational data mart. We have scaled this all the way from 0 to, we can go up to about 0.5 petabyte at the large end of the scale. We try not to go over that because we want to keep very fast, very high performance drives for that. And again, that fix tool. So that allows data blending, data aggregation, the ability to do data cleanup, those kind of things at an analyst level. And from a roles-based perspective, the flow tends to be more on the developer side, more on the technical side. The file tends to be more on the structural architectural side. That's the DBAs kind of the world. The fix tool tends to be more on the data analyst side, BI folks, or just folks doing data investigation and analysis. Now, obviously we have an interface. It's a web-based tool, so you don't need to have any, you don't have to be a DBA to get in here and work on this. But if you want to go deep, you can. Now, those three together are what provide the kind of the core. But the reality is you see all these kind of endpoints out here. We're just kind of showing you that, this third-party stuff is really all of these guys out here. So if you think about this, if you want to move data from just say Google Analytics into a data warehouse, the normal flow would be the data would come in, the flow tool would connect, it would store in the data warehouse, the fix tool would clean it up or rearrange it or aggregate it or do whatever folks would want to do. The flow tool would then connect and redeliver it, but really this third-party data source we're delivering to is the data warehouse that it's going out to. So that's kind of the flow of how all that works within. So from our perspective, any unified data platform contains ETL services, data warehousing services, data prep services. That's kind of the core. Now, the add-ons to that we're going to talk through today is the ability to use that with other tools, back to the Swiss Army knife. obviously we've got some great visualization in the Flare, what we call the Flare tool and dashboarding tools, but there's a lot of tools on the market, and all of them have their own place, and all of them have best-in-class something. That's why they exist. That's why they have growth, and that's why they're great tools for organizations. We have partnerships with many of them. Many of them we don't. But whether that be shared, we can open up the data warehouse directly to allow these tools to connect, or we can actually deliver that into a standard delivery kind of mechanism into somebody's data lake, into somebody's data warehouse, or just straight standard files being delivered as well to manage with those tools, or use ours that is just built in and free to use as well. The kind of last tool, active tool that we want to talk about here is the form tool. The form tool is kind of unique to us in that this is really not super technical, but it's a simple, easy to manage way to collect data on the manual basis. Now that's both data entry, meaning direct web-based forms, data updates, so again, web-based forms, or general workflow. So we find a lot of organizations, large and small, while we would love everything in the world to be automated, we still have an awful lot of places where they still want management or director or someone to review information prior to it going live. So we want to add some of these manual steps in here to make it easy for a single click to let the data move. It also provides tools to allow things like spreadsheets and data files to be able to be easily uploaded on an ad hoc basis. We still work with agencies, we still work with vendors. Many of you are probably on the call today, and providing tools that allow some governance, to allow some validity and verification processes to those files coming in, just to avoid some of those troubles coming and going, so to speak, from data sets is important as well. One of the areas that we've also spent some focus in the more recent years of development is around VPNs and firewalls. These are great cloud-based, web-based service that we tend to install in the cloud. We can do on-premise as well, or private clouds as well. But it doesn't matter if you're working in an environment where there's lots of places, multiple facilities, maybe multiple clouds, maybe you're going to need VPNs. You're going to need or on-site beacons, we call them beacons, ways to connect to other services. So there are, sub-services from a demonstration perspective that allow us to put a cloud VPN in to talk to this facility or that network, et cetera, because there still needs to be ways to have that connectivity outside and to do it simply, to do it easily, so that this is not a long, drawn-out process. The last tool that we will hit on briefly today is what's called the Frame tool. It's simply a reporting tool. We've got lots of great stuff happening up here. We know where data's coming from, some manual, some automated. We know where the data's going to, what tools are using it. We know any visualizations made, the aggregation, the reporting, et cetera, and then how all the data is moving to and fro, its shape, its size, its numbers of records, all that kind of fun stuff. So let's go ahead and report on it. This is your data catalog, data documentation, a way to collaborate around it. So it's meant to all interact. And why do we go through all of this before we go in? Well, as we go into the demonstration itself, you're going to see very quickly every piece of data, every table that we talk about, we use the language of tables like a data warehouse does. You're going to be able to flip between the flow of the data, the file of the data, which is the architecture, the prep of the data, which is the fix, the flares of the data, and the framework or the frame of the data. And that just kind of makes it a little easier to understand, and you can see how the different roles of individuals are going to play into that. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right into a demonstration. So we'll kind of start here kind of on the easy side. The home screen here is just going to it's the standard stuff, what is my status, right? Which things have run, when did it complete the last time? These are all the different flows of data that run. Here's one that didn't because it's checking an email daily for something and there was no email. Here's one that ran, that's great. And, we had an error code of whatever, its request is missing something, et cetera. And I can click on any of these guys to say, hey, what the heck's going on? Go in and look at the flow and start tracing down what's happening there as it goes. Any recent tables or dashboards that we're working through. As I noted, so here, you ready? I'll be very fast. Look, we have charts. Come on, charts. Load up. There's lots of charts. This is a big one because we kind of show you our entire breadth of dashboards. Come on, bud. There we go. As all of these guys kind of come in, and look, we have charts and dashboards and dots and lines and all that kind of fun stuff. And as does everybody else. In addition to that, we also have, we call them our pretty dashboards. Same concept, only it's going to be the newer kind of stuff, stock type charts, those kind of things. I'm beaten up. This is the wonderful part about live dashboards, isn't it though? There we go. So it allows you to kind of give you some ideas of some of the newer stuff and experimentation. And obviously, like everything else, colors and all that kind of fun stuff can be changed and experimented with and all that kind of fun thing. So there, charts are done. Just try to kind of walk through that process to kind of let you know, yes, we have those out there as well. So what we want to do is show you beginning to end in 15 minutes or less. That's my ultimate goal here. In 15 minutes or less, we're going to show you how we automate the process of, let's say, Google Analytics. That's one that everybody gets to deal with on some shape or form. We're going to pull some information from Google Analytics. We're going to maybe roll that up as an aggregate. We're going to kind of show you if we were going to change some underlying data in that as well. And then we'll deliver it, maybe via an email message to somebody, or kind of show you how we would connect to other things as well. And we should be able to hit most of the highlights on that as we go from that perspective, and do that in hopefully the 15 or less. So where we're going to go, we're just going to start very simply with adding tables. Just add a brand new table, and let's call this Sol Review GA sample. And we're going to simply just walk through this. You pick a folder to put stuff in. Let's put it in our use cases folder so we know where it's at. We can do things like production versus staging, so we can shift it and all that kind of fun stuff. We do force our users to select whether they want to back it up or not. We used to just say never by default, and then we had lots of folks never backing things up, and then said, why don't I have a backup? Things like that. So we have lots of selections. You'll notice here, this is where I'm logged in as a developer user. If I was logged in as a standard user, some options like JavaScript would not show up. But because I'm a developer, this is that fun balance trying to show folks between the technical and the non that gets fun. So on this side of things, if I wanted notifications to come up, or if I wanted certain things to fire on the screens, that's what this kind of area is down here. So we want to allow that kind of flexibility. Then we're going to go, we will talk about mashup tables, which are joins and unions for the more technical on there, or custom SQL, which just lets you write whatever you want. But here we're just going to look for a Google, the different types here. See Google Analytics here. We're going to go ahead and create a new Google Analytics. Now, if I've already set up the appropriate accounts, right, which for standard users is what should happen, right? We don't want every user to use their own personal GA accounts to do this kind of stuff, or Adobe accounts, or Marketo accounts, or Oracle, or whatever. We want to set up, organizational ones. So, they would just select that. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new one, and we'll say GA for Sol Review Connector. And, please write descriptions. So this is that whole documentation level that we need to get done that unfortunately seldom does anybody ever do. But so we're going to go ahead and use my account. We give all the permissions and all that kind of fun stuff. And I was successful. Great. So now I'm going to have a new connector that'll let me walk through. So this is the very first time. And again, the key here is we don't do this every time. We're doing it once. So we're going to do that one time. And we just kind of walk through. Oh, I just realized I want to do this daily, not one time. We're going to maybe 3 in the morning. Sure. We'll bring that in. Which property do I want? And it's all the stuff, if any of you have worked with Google Analytics before, it's the standard things that you always have to select. We do have some additional pieces. If there is technology that is available, things like the multi-channel funnels report versus the core reporting, we want to allow it there. Things like sampling level, there's always the default, but you can actually get higher precision. It's not 100% exact, but it's there. So we want to provide those kind of options. Again, it's providing that balance between super highly technical and very basic, and allowing both sides of that. And this is a really good example. Here's a bunch of predefined reports that Google has already driven. We're going to use the visitor report, but I want to show you back to that balance. Because I'm a developer, I have this option. I know what I want, just let me do it. And you're going to see very quickly, I'm now able to select anything from custom dimensions I may have created to any dimension that is available within Google Analytics to any metric, if I scroll on down, that is available within Google Analytics. And as other things come available, I can also use custom items, custom segments, and filters that I may have set up previously that I just want to copy and paste. If I'm on a technical team that I've already had some of these built, I can just copy, paste them in and go. So there are ways to kind of circumvent some of that stuff to make your life even easier if you're technical. But if you're not technical, just go. So we're going to say visitor report. That's kind of very basic information. And then the last step here, I can just bring in yesterday and so this is what data is coming in initially and what data is going to come in every day at 3 a.m. when it refreshes. So let's get some data to work with because I want you all to see what it's like. Use the dates below and maybe let's just do this year so we have some data to work with. And it's through yesterday. Why? Because then at 3 a.m. tomorrow, when it runs, it'll get yesterday, which is today's data, because we want everything to be dynamic in nature, so we never have to touch it again. And that's it. So I know I went through a lot of steps, but again, this is to set up the entire process, beginning and end, to do a flow of data that never has to be touched again. So we're going to save it, and we're going to end in what's called the flow tool. And the reason we're in the flow tool for our Sol Review GA sample is because we want to just see what that flow is. At 3 a.m. every day, we're going to refresh our data from the Sol Review connector. And you'll notice it's letting me know as one of my inputs is my connector, because that makes sense. And it's showing me what that flow is. There is no additional processes. Notice that's all empty. There's no views of the data that we've created, just the original underlying raw data. And there's no outputs, which makes sense because we've not done anything yet. If we look at our notifications, you're going to see here, I've got 1,109 records have been added. You can kind of see the type of stuff that we report on and keep track of and notify for users. So that's the flow tool. We're going to go back to that in a moment. If we wanted to, I'll stay here for a moment. If we wanted to change, for example, I don't need a data process yet, the underlying data. This is the more traditional ETL processing engines. So we're going to kind of show you. So we would come in here, we'd add some data processes. So we're going to add a process to this. We're going to say fix bad campaign data, okay? And we'll say things like, if my campaign is Bob, since I'm Bob, then do what? Maybe we'll just take the action and say, then my campaign really should be Robert. Okay, so that's one option. So that's a simple fix bad campaign. So we'll say fix advanced bad campaign. And this is where that mix between the more complex is and the not so complex. Let's say if the campaign equals Bob and, I don't know, medium equals home, since we're all on lockdown, then take the action of setting keyword equal to stay home. Now, what's nice about this is, yes, this is very basic textual stuff. If you'll notice, anytime I see these little guys here, that means I can go deeper. And this is that balance between the technical and the non-technical. This is what you're going to see here is some SQL-based items. This allows us to do things like see other data. So I can use other data within the data set to start answering this. So this is SQL code for those of you who are on the technical side can do this. Anything that can be done within a select statement within SQL can be done in this box. So we can set that as dynamically loaded information. So, maybe I could do a concatenate of my campaign and my, let's say my medium. Sure, why not? And great. So what that's going to do then is set that value based upon other data that's there. And I could do a bunch of those if I wanted to. So I'll save that. And just as a final piece here to give you an idea, again, changing underlying data. Advanced. So the other note, as I said, we can call URLs, which again is anything RESTful. You notice this should be very familiar for anybody who's on the technical side. This is where we can just write underlying raw custom Python. We just pick your version of Python and run with it. This is like writing a .py file and running it on the command line. The same with SQL, just write it and run a .sql file in the command line. This can be 1,000 lines or 2. There's no real limitations there. And if you see here, the rest of these are pretty simplistic. Again, I see these customs because I'm a technology person. I'm a developer user, so I have those options from call URL to SQL. If I'm not one of those, I'm just a flow user. I can see things like a deduplication process, move data between tables, et cetera. So this is more traditional ETL type services, right, that I can do. So I can save all my data processes, and now that I have those data processes, now I can do things like, hey, I want to put that in my process. So now every single night when my data comes in, I will run those two data processes, and it just runs automatically. So I'm done. I don't have to touch anymore. So let's real quickly just take a look at the underlying data. So this is the fix tool, as we call it, which is where you can investigate, explore, et cetera, work within the data. You'll see the data as it comes in. It's paginated to make life easy. We do allow up to 5,000 records at a time. So we will be able to play with that very easily. But this is where we want the analyst to be able to work with, sort, filter, explore the data pretty easily. So for example, if I wanted to see maybe daily data around user sessions and page views, right? So let's go ahead and we just get rid of all this stuff. Now, again, I'm not actually changing any underlying data. All I'm doing here is building some reporting. So this is, no different than what we normally do. Let's do some sums and maybe an average and run this guy. So we're now going to get daily data, and we're going to start building this kind of information out. Maybe we want to do all that, but break it down by medium and rearrange it. So, okay, so now we've got it, and let's just add one prep to medium, and maybe we will do a change case and make these all lowercase to clean it up just a little bit more. Okay, you see how I very quickly kind of break it down. We say, great, this is the data I need. So we'll go ahead and save that, and we'll say my aggregate. Now, of course, that's not very fancy kind of data there, and I can share it with people in the system if I want, sure. But you can see very quickly, I've not changed anything underlying. I just went back to where I started. I can always hit here and just go back to the underlying raw. But now that I have it, I can always also load up my aggregate data. So that information is there and ready for me to use anytime I want it. And I can use it in other reports. I can use it in wherever I go. And as that data flows in underneath nightly from the flow tool that we just talked about, this is going to automatically update as well. The Flare tool, just to kind of give you a good idea, if we were to load this up and I do users and sessions, and let's just go ahead and run this guy. See, those guys are going to line up. If I want to put them both, let's get rid of users, just sessions, and let's go ahead and break that down by medium, and you'll see very quickly how, yay, I have charts. So that's how you build charts and the different types. And we've got quite a variety of what you can do there and different options you can set about axes and timelines and colors. And again, charting, not real sexy. But as far as the flow is concerned, I will note here that, if we want to send this data, because I wanted to finish the loop, we're going to create a new export, send an email. Now this can be, we're going to tie it to the view, my aggregate data we just did. We're going to deliver it via email. I'm not going to worry about sharing it. We're going to send the download, but we'll add the date and time. We can add compression. We can add PGP encryption. We can email to whoever, which is actually, let's send it to, my Gmail account to avoid a bunch of messiness. Test email, test. And then you can add other stuff, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to head and save it. And again, I can run this, which I'm just going to send it. Notice it's been scheduled for delivery. Or I can add these guys to my to my flow. So now at the end of the night, every night, it's going to run my data processes, send out my aggregate view. So, and that should pop in a minute. I'll show the email when it comes up. The one other item that I really want to note, because we've got the technical folks on here, is what's called the file tool. So I said, I'm still in that GA sample. You'll notice just a lot of the settings. I won't go real deep here because of our timing, but you've got things like date, right? We did some machine learning just to guess what all the right formats are coming in, et cetera. Because whether we take CSV, Excel, GA, Twitter, whatever the data points are, we do allow all this to be set. So, descriptional fields, all that kind of fun stuff. But, you can set your formats, date, time. You can tweak it down to, is it insert time, update date time, index fields, required or not, read only or not. And you guys can control this. Now, most of our customers, once it's set up, this doesn't change very often, but source is a good example that maybe this is actually wants to be a list field, right? So this should be a drop down of all the possible items that are there. So this can actually be a predefined list field. Maybe medium would have been a better course of that than the list. But you kind of get a feel for that, as well as mark them as indexes, which will speed things up to connect, whatever. So it's really kind of again, the jack of all trades from that perspective. On the architectural side, the frame tool, which we noted earlier, we talked about some of the collaboration that you can go back and forth and have this. Your notifications could be email, text message, whatever you need there. This guy, and I'll just jump back and forth real quick. If you notice now, collaboration can be open and closed from anywhere. We default it on when you're in what's called the frame tool, which is that kind of data catalog. This is all the information about the information, right? So this is what fields do we have, sample data for each and every one of those. If there's any flows, what are the steps in the flow, where they come from, if there's any exports, information. So this is just reporting around the data from that perspective. So that's kind of where the frame tool comes in. The last piece that I want to note is I'm running a little bit long, but I just want to make sure that I hit upon it. You see there's lots of other fun stuff you could do here, but what becomes the other area where we run into a lot is when we have folks that want to look at multiple data sets, right? We want to blend data together. So things like they're having data coming in from a CRM system, which is pretty standard kind of stuff, HubSpot, Salesforce, internal CRM. You have data like this, but you also may have data coming in from a revenue system where it's just unique identifiers and a timestamp, maybe some financial information, and then there might be a campaign system, and then there might be a X, Y, and Z system, whatever. But it's all coming from multiple sources. You need to get that data to your BI tool. So what we would do in this case is we would just add new data set. That's kind of how we look at it. Again, take all the smallest pieces and link them together. And we'll just say combo data for Sol review. And then we simply go, it's a mashup table. And, this is just for the tech folks, horizontal mashups are joins and vertical mashups are unions. So there's really no magic there. But we're just going to say our CRM data, and we're going to link that to our revenue data. And you just link these guys together. Again, there's not magic, it's your joins. And save it. And very quickly, if I look, so the flow now, there is no flow because it's just a linked table, but you'll see where the two data tables come from. So now if I look at this data set, I don't have the individual data. It's going to look like duplicated data. It's not really. It's the join of those two data sets. It's going to pop open in a minute. 3, 2, 1, go. Come on, buddy. Come on, browser. There we go. And you can see all that data popping up for us. It looks like we matched all but 2 records here. And why that becomes important is now as we can start doing a lot of that reporting, so we can do things like revenue by state, right? Because we have that kind of information that we couldn't a moment ago. And then the last piece here, just to note for you guys, is being able to take these data sets. Any of these can now be converted. So we can actually convert this table. So let's say we have 10 tables all there, but you want to tweak it. You need to go a little further. So we can actually convert this table to what's called a custom SQL table. So this allows the technical folks, now again, developers only, technical folks to go deeper. So they can take this and do whatever they want. You'll notice things like these T underscore numbers, whatever. We do allow those kind of things. You'll see if I hover 350, that should look familiar because some of those will be out there. Tables are named appropriately so that you can see what the underlying codes are there, etc. It's just a way to be able to quickly and easily manage. It's a management tool as well. And it's just a way to get there. So lots of stuff there. There's lots more, but we try to keep it brief and stay within the limits as much as possible. So at that point, I'll just kind of stop my share and come back to Doug and see what questions and discussions we might have.
Thanks, Bob. There was a lot there, and quite frankly, I could have watched you keep going. I'm sorry that we had a time limiter because I was good with where you were headed. I'm curious about a couple of things. So you have a solution that offers a lot. What are you seeing is the most popular feature, I guess, would be as you think about it, or the most popular functionality? I mean, I see data integration is pretty prevalent. Is that something that people are taking advantage of?
Ease of use. So there tends to be two buckets. Bucket number one tends to be the slightly less, and I only say slightly anymore, but slightly less marketing driven parts of the organization who don't quite get the amount of support that they need. And it can be resource based, it can be attitudinally based, it can be politically based, all sorts of reasons. But they're not quite getting the level of technology needs from the IT, engineering, CIO, whatever group you want. But they have so many needs. There's like 7,000, I think MarTech chief says now, 7,000 MarTech apps out there. So they're struggling getting all that data as marketing's trying new things in. And the needs aren't being kept up with. So this allows marketing to start feeding that in on their own without necessarily needing all the infrastructure and resources of IT behind them. So that's one camp that we're seeing a heavy use from that perspective. The second is actually the other side of the shop, which is IT that are being asked to support marketing, and there's 7,000 different marketing technologies out there, and they're allowing us, we're kind of the middleman to provide. We provide all of the integrations, and we feed the data lake or the data warehouse at the large enterprise so that IT and engineering doesn't have to deal with all of the API changes every day. And we're just kind of the middleman. So in that case, we're not the data warehouse provider. It's back to that agnostic jack of all trades. We're just the integrator and just the file deliverer, right? We're just formatting it to keep the IT side happy in governance and happy in standards. But we manage the APIs versus the first, which is we manage kind of soup to nuts to not have a resource load on IT at all. The other side is we're just eliminating the resource need from the MarTech connectors.
Seeing a question here with regard to the types of data sources that you connect with. Specifically, what types of data sources do you connect with? I think that probably follows on to what you were just talking about.
Yeah, it does. And there's predominantly it tends to start normally with obviously the heavy lifting marketing technologies, right? Your advertising and sales applications, social applications, et cetera, because marketing is kind of our core. But as we've branched out into finance, as we've branched out into broadcast and telecom, obviously everybody has their niche, right? That's part of that space. The way we build connectors, it's kind of unique in that is we actually work with our partners, customers, prospects, et cetera. If they need connectors, as long as they help us provide credentials, we will go build the connectors on our dime. That's how we build connectors, because we never know what's coming next. We never know what the next new thing is. So we let them kind of drive it. That tends to be how we build our roadmap. There's always a few we have to have, Google, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera. But we normally are driven by the prospect need, and that's the next one up is always there. It's a 2 to 3 week process. It's really not that big because that's what we specialize in, is building those integrations. The other one I will note, there's always the oddballs. One of the areas that we try to focus, way back on that original chart, CSV files, tab files, text files, while I hate them and I wish the world was all automated and clean, we try to put a lot of focus, a whole lot of focus on the ability to capture that stuff coming in from email and Dropbox and those kind of things, because it's still the way the world goes around, from large to small company. It doesn't matter. It's still a lot of the day-to-day operations.
Is in sort of a batch?
Yes, a lot of batch. We're seeing with the world of CDPs and the world of live, we're starting to see more event-driven. We didn't get into that today. From our perspective, we can do a lot of that. We have, on record add, on record update, on record delete, where we can fire off other things to happen. CDPs are making a big leap, but unfortunately, there's so much from so many places. A lot of places aren't quite caught up there yet, right? A lot of organizations aren't ready to do fully live all the time, because that's a little scary, I guess. If you get the wrong data in the wrong hands quickly, especially with PII, GDPR, and California's new roles and Washington coming on board, it becomes touchy about what data is floating where.
So I've got a question that gets to your strategic side, Bob, asking about your current marketing focus and whether that will remain your area, or do you plan to move into more ETL software?
It's a little bit of a mix. So definitely ETL, a space that we're seeing as has a heavy need in this that's been kind of untouched a little bit is the manufacturing space, supply chain space. They've got a lot of needs around, IoT's been talked about for years, right? IoT and manufacturing is huge and it's been growing, but the services to support it are still very contained within one small space. And they're still very much an on-premise world, not cloud-based. So that's an area that we're looking at. Higher education it has so many new systems and so many great tools, especially after the Corona ordeal we've just been through. Everything's online now. A lot of those barriers of we must be on premise are kind of crumbling. So some of that we're seeing is some opportunities for us and others, certainly. So those tend to be two areas that we're looking at. Marketing continues to grow. That's been it's not a great thing for us, but everybody being forced to leave the building has been a great opportunity for us to go, yeah, you can really put this online. It's okay. We can work through that.
So I want to stick with that point because the world has changed, and some would say that it's going to stay changed, and that we are becoming and will become a much more virtual workforce and more virtual workplaces, and as a result, that has several implications. Certainly, data governance. How do you control who gets to see what and where it ends up? Which actually, I'll stick with that for right at the moment. How do you use a system like this to make sure that the right data gets in front of the right people who are allowed to see it, and not just anyone?
Oh, right,
permissions and so forth.
Yeah, and I'll actually hit that, and I'll be fast. I don't want to say three and everybody go, oh, he's going to talk for an hour.
No.
One is just general access to who has access to what. We go very granular from both the tool sets as well as the data sets. So group-based permissioning, who can see versus update versus delete versus even access whole tools. So we go very granular on that. Early on, I had noted the roles in the different tools become very, very important, certainly. That's kind of number one. Number two is really about general security as a whole. Things like database access. We talked about other tools like visualization tools, Tableau, Domo that was on earlier today, Power BI, Data Studio, whatever. All of those, any permissions we set in the platform are also set in the data warehouse and the database. So anything externally that connect to us, all those same permissions flow to the data warehouse. So even secondary access is going to be locked to the same level. The third is an area that we try to take some extra on because everybody kind of forgets about it, which is if you have access to data, what about the bad actors or somebody who just got laid off who still has access for another week, which is we can also lock down data to say this data set or even this field is never allowed to leave the database. So the user can see it, but if they try to export 1 million records of somebody's private information, it just says, nope, export denied. So they can't export all of those HubSpot, Marketo, Salesforce records to their next employer. It just won't leave the system. It won't allow it to leave. So those become very important as well, because being able via machine learning, those kind of things to tag email, phone number, street address as that type of information becomes very important as well.
So I'm curious, I have a question actually around data science connectors.
Yeah, well, I could try. Data science it's a tough, it depends on what data science means. As far as BI tools, we noted a couple of those. Secondary to that, products like Minitab, SAS, there's also some ASG that's more data cataloging, et cetera. It kind of depends on what space is in there. Python, which obviously can do deep dive. RTiny. There's a couple of the other ones that kind of go in there as well. So we utilize the back end. There's no magic to this. I think it's on our website. It's a MySQL variant. So we use open source data warehousing. We do that on purpose so that any of the newer applications or old applications for that matter should be able to connect to us directly without any hindrance to what their capabilities are. So any PC with ODBC capability, which has been around for decades, would be able to connect directly to the data warehouse and start using not just the database, but any of those unique views that I created, like that roll-up view of data during the demo. Even the cleaned up views that the analysts do, they would be able to see their cleaned up views with aggregated data, et cetera. So we want to be able to let both sides be activated easily.
So one last question as we wrap things up, and it's always a question I'm curious to know is how best to engage with TMMData. So what do you see as the kind of best way for somebody to say, hey, I'm interested in hearing more? I mean, walk me through that process of getting engaged, maybe developing some sort of proof of concept. What is the best way for somebody to connect with you?
Normally, honestly, the best case is to start with just a simple, connect with us on the website, ask for a demo. Normally, we do a couple step. We do just a touch point to make sure we're the right fit. We tend to be a little over the top transparent, meaning if we're not, we'll tell you who we think might be. That's number one. Number two is we will do kind of a longer, more general demo, although they've all seen it now. So we're good on that. Number three would be then more customized demo. They would tell us a specific use case or need. We would customize the demo for them. Because we have so many pieces, though, we don't tend to do a download it and try it kind of scenario, because it's easy to get lost on a very large platform, right? So we then, the last piece is, if you want to get on and do a pilot, we will set up the basics and then do a 1 to 2 hour training with the small group of people and set up what's considered successful, right? Nobody wants to just have a blank slate and say, was it successful? But if you don't have a marker to get to, how do you know if it was? Did you get to the mark or not? You never know. So, set up what is good, what is bad, what is pass, what is fail, and then help everybody get there. Do, touch-ins, those kind of things. That tends to be our process. Kind of walk everybody kind of across the bridge, so to speak. And hopefully everybody gets to the end, is very happy with the outcome.
Outstanding. Bob, well, thanks very much for being here. Thanks for doing that demo and walking through all the functionality. I know there's plenty more you could do, but we appreciate what you were able to show us today.
Thank you.
We also want to thank everybody who attended our Data Demo Day. It's our first one. It's really our response to the current moment where events are being canceled, and it's hard for folks who are trying to understand their options out there to see the things that they might normally see at a trade show, at a booth at a conference, and so we're very happy with the way things turned out for this. We're probably going to do a few more as we move through this moment in time and try to keep people connected. But again, Bob, thanks very much for being here and being a part of it, and thank you all very much for attending. And that'll wrap up our Data Demo Day for today. Thanks.
Thank you.